Hello, and welcome to episode 24 of Public Interest Podcast with your host, Jordan Cooper, where we interview politicians, activists, advocates, and others who seek to improve the state of the world. We're here today with Delegate Shane Robinson of Montgomery County, Maryland, who is the chair of the Montgomery County delegation to the Maryland House of Delegates. How are you doing today, Shane?
Pretty good, Jordan. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So what I'd like to start off by asking you is, what are you currently doing, or what have you ever done to advance the public interest, and why?
Well, let me start with the second part. Why would I want to advance the public interest?
Exactly.
I just want, I want a better world for my family, for my community, for all of humanity. I think that's an important thing. I think it's a big driver in a lot of people's lives. The more complicated question is, what have I done to advance that? And I'd say I've tried to do a number of things. Whether or not they were successful or will be remains to be seen, but I do continue to try.
Well, you said that it's almost a common desire to improve the world. What would that look like? How does one even know what needs to be done to improve the world?
I think if you look at the world today, you see a lot of needless suffering. You see a lot of wealth, and you see a lot of resources that are present, yet they're not getting to everybody. We've got a world where food is plentiful, yet people go hungry. There could be water for everybody, but we use that water for things other than drinking it. Mm-hmm. It's that type of... There's a problem with resources. There's a problem with clean air. There's a huge issue with environmental justice in the world. And I think we have everything that we need. It's just not getting to everyone. And I think we need to address that, and we need to build a world where people have access to basic needs, basic human rights. And there are a lot of ways to go about doing that. There are thousands, if not millions, of ways to try to get involved to make those things happen. And, I think we all have to collectively do our part. I think it's motivating for people because, we're all human beings. We're a social species, and being a social species, we like when other people in our group are okay, when they're happy, when they're healthy. There's a positive feedback with that, and I think we have the ability to do it. It just hasn't happened, so we're just still plugging away in 2016.
So talk to me a little bit about, so you've had a very interesting life. From being a Peace Corps volunteer where you were actively on the ground trying to make those who are less well off, to make their lives better, all the way to currently with your work with nonprofits and being in a legislature and making laws, working with animal rights laws. So I guess let's start kind of more back at your foundation. You were motivated after college to go off somewhere in the world and be a Peace Corps volunteer. You could have stayed and had electricity and running water and hot water and fun and friends and make a salary, but instead you chose to go abroad. Why?
Well, part of it was, I want to help and I want to be part of this normative process that we're all involved in. Another part was selfish. I like to travel. I like adventure. The idea of going and living in a mud hut in sub-Saharan Africa was appealing to me when I was in my early 20s. And on some levels it still is. So that was part of it. I think the main driver was to begin a career of trying to do good things for people, trying to make life better. But it's very complicated. My Peace Corps service, well, on its face, was something that was very good, you could say. We were trying to decrease tuberculosis, protect people from malaria, do a lot of HIV/AIDS education. We were involved in a lot of prenatal care and safe motherhood issues, and other things. Water and sanitation. We built wells. We did a number of things, but it's more complicated than just going there and doing these things. You have to look at why we were there, and did it make sense for us to be there, and what part of the geopolitical structure were we playing. We went there not as Peace Corps volunteers in this new health program not long after the IMF basically set up structural readjustment in Zambia in the early 90s. They looked at the ministries in that country, and they reduced funding in the ministries that weren't making revenue, such as the Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, and others, and they put more funding into ministries that would create wealth. And once you get rid of a bunch of health professionals in a country, you've got a problem. You're cutting a budget in a ministry, but now you have less health professionals out there on the ground helping people in their own culture. Part of what they did to help mitigate that was bring in a bunch of American kids to go out and do these projects. So I can say, yeah, the projects that I was involved in were good, but was it better for me to be there instead of having a Zambian health professional there before those budgets were cut? I mean, clearly it's better to have the Zambian there. And it was a step back to have us there. So if you look at it holistically, it was actually, while I was doing good things on a micro level, the macro was problematic, and that speaks to the way we've handled a lot of our development and aid issues globally that I take issue with. And that's why I changed from wanting to have an international career in development to wanting to work in my own country, in my own culture, to solve the problems here, many of which are the same problems that you see overseas.
So it sounds like it would have been better for the Zambians if other Zambians stayed and were able to help those within their own communities instead of importing labor from across the other side of the world. And then that motivated you to return to your own community and say, well, maybe there's something I can do to improve my own community in my own backyard. Does that resonate with you?
It does, and there's no question. I mean, in the area where I served, it was an area maybe 20 miles across in diameter, had about 14,000 people, mostly subsistence farmers, and they had several healthcare professionals there before structural readjustment. Got nurses, physician, etc. When I arrived, there was one environmental health technician covering the 14,000 people. That's the equivalent of a PA with some public health experience.
For our listeners, a PA is a physician assistant. It's a formal a medical professional with less training than a medical doctor.
Right, exactly. And I'm sure that physician's assistant equivalent would rather be working with other medical professionals that graduated from school, have practiced, and can do that than bringing in someone like me. And I was with my wife, the two of us who had 12 weeks of training in public health, and we're just learning to speak the language, and everything was new. You can't compare those two things in terms of care for the community. I mean, it changed my life. It made me want to come back, and it made me look at the world differently, and it makes me want to do more things for the world. But when you look at raw outcomes for that community, it would have been better if they just had kept the money in the Ministry of Health. And you see that, you see that in a lot of places around the world.
So, from your time over there, who was better off for the experience? Who gained more from the experience, you or the Zambians?
I think, no question, that it was me. That was one of the most enriching experiences in my life. But I am left with the feeling that, while I made a lot of friends, and I believe that my community enjoyed having me be there, I was there for a couple of years, and then I was out of the community. I did stay another year and a half in Zambia, but I was doing another project.
So in that instance, public service actually benefited the giver almost to a greater extent more than the recipient because it was such a rewarding experience. Would you say that you were there advancing American interests?
I would say that to an extent, not directly, but a lot of Peace Corps volunteers end up going and serving in the State Department later. They get a lot of language training, they get a lot of intercultural experience, they get experience just living without things that they might otherwise not have to live without. And those all help when you need to serve your country in a different capacity. So a lot of my colleagues in the Peace Corps now serve at USAID, they serve in the State Department, they work for international NGOs. I mean, I don't want to call it a training camp for that, but there is a bit of a pipeline. And I was on that track too, but when I came back and really studied this issue in graduate school, I began to think that maybe I was best placed to stay in my own country and culture and also work in a place where we're making policy decisions, where if you're in the Peace Corps or if you're receiving a grant from a governmental organization to do an aid project, you're not making policy decisions, you're implementing something. And you can be the long arm of the American government or of any government, and that can be good or bad, depending. But if you're part of making policy, I think that's where you can really drive change, real lasting change. It's one thing to put Band-Aids on people. It's another to try to stop the cuts from happening in the first place from a policy perspective.
So I want to bring it back to District 39 in Montgomery County, Maryland, where you are an elected official representing 120,000 constituents. You have a voice over a $60 billion budget, including an about $11 or $12 billion health budget. You were in Zambia and saw what happened when a government decided to make a major cut to a certain area of the budget, and you saw the on-the-ground implications of those budget cuts. On the other hand, you're in the legislature and you have the ability to create a budget. Actually, constitutionally, you can only detract from the budget, but you can negotiate with it before the governor submits it. Mm-hmm. How does all of your experience in Africa and working in your own community inform your sense of responsibility as a policymaker over your community?
Well, I think it's given me several things. I mean, one is I think it's given me a broader understanding of the world, and I've lived in other places too. I spent about 16 years overseas. But there's that. And actually, one day I was knocking doors when I was first trying to get elected, and I heard some people speaking Ichibemba, which was a language that was spoken in my area. So Montgomery County is incredibly diverse, and thousands and thousands of miles away from that little area, and yet you find that language right here in District 39. So that's been helpful. In terms of budget, it's given me a sense that, sometimes you look at a budget and things seem like expenses, but really those are investments. If you're talking about education and healthcare and expenses, I don't feel like we're spending money. I feel like we're investing money in the future. Like if you have a healthy and well-educated population, you are going to do well. And I think we need to put as much energy into delivering quality healthcare to as many people as we can. And I believe that we should get people as much education as possible, and that we should subsidize that as a state to the extent that we can, because it's going to pay dividends. I think it was a mistake during that time that they were looking to cut costs to those things globally, and this was driven by large international banks. They wanted to put money into economic development, and they wanted to cut things like education and healthcare, and that what you're doing is you're not cutting a budget. What you're doing, you're not saving. You're not saving costs. What you're doing is you're cutting the future, because you're not allowing people to get as far as they could, be it in terms of their personal well-being or their education, and then they're just going to contribute less. They're not going to be as effective. They'll end up being a person that requires resources rather than somebody that's going to contribute more to society. So I really think I think we need to be spending a lot more on health and education.
So you go to session for 90 days every winter in Annapolis. You introduce legislation, you co-sponsor, you sit through hearings. What goes through your mind in terms of identifying your priorities? What are you really there to do every single year for District 39, for Montgomery County, and for the state of Maryland?
Well, for District 39, I'm there to represent my voters. So I sit on the Environment and Transportation Committee, and we see bills that deal with that subject matter. But there are many bills outside of that, and on those I focus on voting in a way that is going to best benefit my constituents first, and then afterwards the county and the state at large. In terms of the county, as county delegation chair, it's my role to carry the county's water. You know, the citizens in the county have elected the county executive, the county council, the board of education, and there are a number of civic groups that are working hard for the county. I feel like it's my role to take what their priorities are and push for them in the body. So I spend a lot of time on different capital projects, mostly. You know, you've heard of the Corridor Cities Transit Way and the Watkins Mill Interchange and the Purple Line and the fourth building at universities at Shady Grove and many other projects. Mm-hmm. Those have been at risk under the current governor, so we spend a lot of time trying to hold our ground and make sure that those projects are funded so we can increase economic development and general well-being in the county. In terms of my role on my committee, the Environment and Transportation Committee, I view all of these issues as connected. You know, the well-being of constituents in 39 are connected to their quality of life and their access to education and health care, and those things are connected to the environment. You can't have good health care without a clean and safe environment.
Sounds like you talk a lot about both the imperative to prioritize and empathize with everyone's humanity and understand that we're all part of an interconnected ecosystem where the education of the youth will affect the economy of the future, that the health care of the population affects, and it's not that the economy is the end-all be-all metric of success, but that you're not able to enjoy, to be productive at work or enjoy life if your water is contaminated with cholera or if the Chesapeake Bay and the air are not protected. Sure. So Absolutely. It sounds like you're talking about the inherent interchange and connectivity among every single aspect. So even though you're in just one committee, you're talking about how everything is interconnected. Does that?
Oh, absolutely. Like we're in District 39, but the air and the groundwater don't know those boundaries. And we're dealing with hydraulic fracturing right now, which we have a moratorium on it in the state that is about to expire next year. So we're looking at it in the upcoming session. That's a huge thing because, fracking out in Garrett and Allegheny counties is going to have a direct environmental effect on people in this county. And as Marylanders, we should care about what's happening in all the state and, frankly, all of the world. So that's a big water issue. That's an air quality issue. It's a human health issue on many levels. We deal with food and agriculture. One bill that I have going in next session tries to limit the use of antibiotics in livestock. We know that about 75% it's about 70% maybe of the human important antibiotics aren't used on humans. They're actually used on livestock, on animals at very low dosages. And that's just because they're confined in close proximity to these other animals, it's very easy to transmit disease. So if you keep them on antibiotics constantly, the idea is it's going to decrease their susceptibility to disease. The problem is low doses of antibiotics are basically a petri dish for superbugs, and those superbugs will jump from animals to humans, and we're seeing that now in hospitals across the country where they're prescribing antibiotics and they're no longer working because they have this antibiotic-resistant bacteria. So we had about 25,000 deaths due to antibiotic-resistant bacteria across the country last year. And things like, because antibiotics aren't working the way they used to, amputations are up, and incredibly so. So your chance of having a leg amputated because you had an infection now are much greater than they were a few years ago. And it's a great step back in medicine. So what we're trying to do is do our part in Maryland, at least, where we're going to limit the antibiotics that are used in livestock in favor of human health, because they are connected. And also it's going to help the animals' health care because it'll require different flock management. I say flock because we have a lot of chickens. 300 million chickens every year in Maryland.
One for every American.
One for every American. So if we manage those flocks differently, they're less likely to transmit disease. We don't have to use the antibiotics. Purdue, our largest producer, is already doing that. They're mandating it, so it's going in that direction. But those are the kinds of things that we do on the committee that have a direct effect on human health.
So it sounds like you're able to go to the legislature and fight for advancing that which is in the long-term interest of society at the expense of short-term costs, where your opposition is opposed to increasing short-term costs. It may require cattle to be bred different, but you're drawing connections between amputees in hospitals and drawing connecting that line to the methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, or MRSA bacteria.
Right.
And then you're drawing that back to prophylactic, which for our listeners means preventative, antibiotic use in livestock, which again gets drawn back to potentially even an obesity epidemic and our eating habits. So you're creating these connections between basically our diet and how somebody can end up with a superbug in a hospital and be readmitted within 30 days. So it sounds like you have a holistic perspective and an entire interconnected economy and environment and human system in Maryland, and it's your charge as a representative to protect that. Since we're actually nearing the end of the podcast, I'd like you to comment on that within the context of your motivations. You clearly have a very unique perspective in the legislature, and obviously by being unique, it's not dominant. So could you talk a little bit about what drives you to push your philosophy forward and to ensure that you're doing the right thing according to your sense and understanding of what is right and your worldview, and how you're able to persevere in the face of adversity and what continues to drive you in public service?
Well, I mean, that's a question I try to answer for myself all the time. I think when you're in a legislature with 140 other members, and then you've also got the Senate, and you've got the governor, and you've got everybody else in the state. Things can become very gray. You know, what might be very black and white to you when you're by yourself and waking up in the morning becomes gray when you start to listen to other people's perspectives and you try to come up with a solution. And I'm part of a body, like any legislature, it's set up for compromise, which means you're not going to get everything that you want. You're going to get part of it, and there's going to be gridlock at times, and you have to be okay with that. And it's frustrating. And oftentimes you're going to lose, and people aren't going to agree with you, and they might even say not very nice things about you sometimes. But you've got to, I guess you've just got to look back at, you know, what I try to do is I try to ask myself, is there something that I'm working on right now that is making a difference? And is there hope that I'm going to make a difference? Because I'm one person. There are many people. You said there are 120,000 people in District 39. Many of them could probably serve quite well as delegate. So I think for me it's always, as long as I feel like I'm part of a solution and that I'm working on something that's going to help down the road, I want to be here. But when that's not happening, whenever that is, and it's inevitable, every job ends, that's when it's time to let somebody else try, who will have other ideas and other solutions. And you can even have ideas and solutions. It doesn't mean you're going to get them through. You might be ineffective in actually having them come to fruition. So all that goes through my head all the time, because, you know, I think for this job, you've got to, you know, you've got to see some progress. Otherwise, why do it? It's 90 months away. It's 90 days away from your regular job. You're going to be away from your family. You know, you are getting compensated for it, but when you're living in a expensive county like Montgomery County, it's probably not going to make all your ends meet. So for me, it is very important that I'm part of a solution and that I'm seeing things happen. And I think right now we are making some progress as a state, and I think some of the legislation I'm working on and some of the people I'm working with we're moving in the right direction. But there are also days when I question that, and I wonder. So what you've brought up is a question of self-reflection for myself, and I appreciate that, but I guess what I'm saying is I look for that answer every day, and you know, on good days I have it, on other days I don't.
So that has been Delegate Shane Robinson, who seeks to understand what his role is in an interconnected world, and he uses his life as a means of advancing the public interest by trying to have a moral compass, and he follows his own true north. Public service to Delegate Robinson is determining what is right in the long term for everyone, and then working as best he can to find and make progress, and recognizing that he has limitations, and that when you seek to advance the public interest through public service, you're not always going to win, but you need to have determination, understand that a half loaf is sometimes better than no loaf at all, and be satisfied that maybe the world's a little bit better because you've been here. Thank you so much for joining us for episode 24 of Public Interest Podcast with your host, Jordan Cooper, where we interview politicians, activists, advocates, and others who seek to improve the state of the world. We'll speak to you next time.